Hello, everyone from Zen Club. I'm Chef Alice. I'm so happy that you're having me back. So yes, as Courtney was saying, I'm going to be doing a Spanish meaning from Spain, dinner. So we're first going to get underway the Spanish roasted chicken and vegetables. So the nice thing about a sheet pan dinner, which is what we're doing, is all the kids in the pool at once. So you can put everything on the sheet pan, bake it off, and there's lots of room for substitutions in this dish. If you don't have every spice or seasoning that I'm using, you can definitely ask me about substitutes, but you're going to learn when you do classes with me, flavor profiles. So in Spain, one of the popular flavor profiles is smoked paprika, fennel, citrus. They're really a nice blend of spices. So I'm going to show you first what a half sheet pan looks like. So this is not a flimsy cookie sheet. This is actually a half sheet aluminum pan that is sold and used in every restaurant all over. Okay, this is very, very sturdy. This is what they look like over time. There's no getting around it. They start to look funky. They build a patina. And so I use, for easier cleanup and no sticking, I like to use parchment paper. You can certainly grease aluminum foil or just put it directly on the pan. But we're going to get started by putting together our mixture, our seasoning mixture. To start with, I have an orange. You can use really any kind of orange as your recipe indicates. I happen to have navels. So I'm using a microplane to get off the zest. And the nice thing about the microplane, it does such an incredibly efficient job with just one swipe. This is not like a box grater where you're doing this up and down motion. You're giving one swipe and you're banging the zest off of it. Or you can take a paring knife and scrape it off. But we're just basically scraping it against the microplane in one direction. And you see, I keep the orange moving because I don't want to get any of the bitter pith. Just the colored part, which is the zest. And I've talked about this in my other classes with everyone, that when I buy citrus, I zest the entire bag of citrus, I juice the entire bag, and then I keep everything in the freezer because the zest is so much incredible flavor, and it really is a great pick-me-up. If you taste a dish and it's kind of flat, it might need a little acid or a little bit of zest. And that's basically it. So I'm just going to take my finger and get the zest off like that. Just bang it out. Now, I got my zest. I want to get as much juice as possible, so I'm just going to roll the orange. I already have my oven preheated at 400 degrees. So I'm going to cut it. When you're juicing citrus, you always want to cut not through the blossom end, but through the center like that. And then I have this big manual juicer. You can use a citrus reamer. You could just use your hands and squeeze it like that. So I'm just going to avert my face so I don't get any. And just by rolling it and removing the orange from the refrigerator about a half hour, I loosened it up a little bit. So as you can see, this goes both ways. I turn it this way and then I turn it that way to extract even more juice. And I've got, I have my garbage bowl right under here, a Publix bag. We all have the matching set of this luggage. So I make work easy for me. Instead of making 20 trips back and forth to the garbage, I have it right here. A little more. So as you can see, the This does a very, you see that came right out the side, right out the side. Okay, so we'll put this in the sink. I like to clean as I go. Put that in there as well. All the zest. To this, I'm going to add, this is going to be sweet and sour. So I've got light brown sugar. And I have, that was 2 tablespoons of light brown sugar, and you have your recipe. Now I'm using red wine vinegar, or you can use sherry vinegar. That's a product from Spain. So equal parts, so you've got the sweet, the sour. That's what life is like, sweet and sour, especially during these crazy times. I've got my olive oil. So 2 of these will equal 1/4 cup. This is going to be placed all over the sheet pan with the chicken, and you can see all the vegetables. So let me make sure I didn't forget anything. 1 second. Okay, my oil. All right, I've got my fennel seeds that are going to go in, my paprika. So smoked paprika is a product of Spain. They're peppers that are grown specifically. They are smoked, and there's nothing like smoked paprika. You can use regular paprika, certainly you can do that, but pimenton, the sweet pimenton, is just fantastic. You can also make it spicy. You can add cayenne, or you can buy hot pimenton, which is pimenton picante, which means spicy. So I have that over here. Now, I've already cut up my Yukon Gold potatoes. I'm using these baby Yukon Golds. You could use the baby red potatoes. If you didn't have baby potatoes, you can just quarter or cut into 8s a larger potato. I also have green beans that I've cut in half on the bias. We talked about a bias cut. You're going to hold the knife at a 45-degree angle. It just looks a little more elegant. And I've already rinsed all of my produce. Now I'm going to show you how I slice a bell pepper. So you've got this little handle. Keep your fingers out of the way. I've shown you this before if you've watched me do these demos in the past. So I'm pinching one side with my thumb, one side with my forefinger, just like this. I'm literally choking up on the blade. And I have my fingers bent under like this. And I'm just going to cut all the way around the bell pepper, all around the seed pocket, so I don't have to fish out a ton of seeds, just like that. And I want to just get rid of some of the membrane. It's not harmful to eat, but I just want to get rid of most of it. And then we're going to cut this into strips. Okay, when you're cutting a bell pepper, much easier to cut it smooth side down versus smooth side up. The knife just goes through it. Much easier. And what I'm doing is I'm rocking and chopping. You notice my fingers are out of the way. Okay. One more. And last. All right. So now I'm going to put on my gloves. So I'm going to start assembling. I have one last thing I need to cut. So what you see here, this is where I have my ingredients all prepped out. So I have this large red onion. Notice how I'm holding it. making sure it's not going to get away from me, and I cut it, you see, through the blossom end. We're going to cut this into eighths, just like this. Always easier to cut with cut side down. Just like that. Comes right off. Now, what I've also gone ahead and what I did ahead of time was I smashed a small head of garlic. I can feel this onion already. I can feel it in my eyes. If you have to take an extra layer, that's perfectly fine. Especially with red onions, they could be tricky to peel. It's like, should I take the first layer? Am I wasting? If it makes your life easier, it's not a big deal. Okay, one more. Okay, let me get this core out. All right, let's break this up. So what I did was, I had a head of garlic, I smashed the cloves open, and this will roast along with the chicken and everything else. And I want it to be served like this. I want them to be big, discernible pieces. So anyone who loves garlic can go in for it. And those that don't will be able to see it much easier than if they were cut up into tiny pieces. And then they're more likely to burn that way. So let me grab my sheet pan here. I'm going to, I separated out my salt in a separate bowl so I don't introduce contaminated fingers. Now these are very big thighs, the chickens too, not just mine. So we're going to season it on both sides. And then I will start building the dish. You notice I liberally season this with salt. Now, let me grab my pepper mill. Always use fresh ground pepper if at all possible. Let me grab, oops, my tongs. What you do to one side, you want to do the other. Okay, so now what we're going to start to do, like I said, my oven is at 400 degrees. We're going to mix all of this together. The last thing to go in, I want to separate out some of these. If you separate them out too much, they may end up burning. So you want to keep them kind of together. Maybe separate it out like that. Okay. Got one more. Then we've got our garlic. We eat a ton of garlic in my house, a ton. It's alarming if you saw how much. All right, so I'm also adding my pimentone to the mixture. My fennel seeds. You could either put it over the chicken or you could put it right into this marinade. Now, I've already stripped these fresh thyme sprigs. So when you're stripping thyme, you hold it like this and you pull backward and it strips the entire thing. I'm saving these for garnish. I also have olives. It's not Spanish without olives. Now I'm going to get a big spoon. Let me give this a little mix. Season this. Okay, think of salt as a flavoring. As much as it is a seasoning, it has to taste good. Your food has to taste good. I'm gonna just put my knife through this a couple of times, break it up a little more. With your perennial herbs, your rosemary, your thyme, your sage, those are your much stronger herbs. You want to mince the heck out of those. Your more delicate herbs, your annuals, like your basil, your cilantro, your parsley, you don't want to chop those too fine. Okay, so put that over everything. I also want to season the veg as well. And then we're going to mix everything with the marinade. Just a little pepper. Okay, so now let me move this out of the way. Get closer. In just a matter of minutes, your work area could look like a complete mess, so I don't want that. So we've got everything here. It's almost like a vinaigrette, like a Spanish vinaigrette. That beautiful color, you can smell the citrus, the zest. Now, if you make this at home, if you wanted to do one extra step, it's not necessary, but if you wanted to, you could give a lot of color on top of the stove to the chicken thighs. I'm using bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs because they are next to impossible to overcook. They're much more flavorful than chicken breast, which is very, very easy to overcook if you're not careful. And like I said, these are just incredible. You can do boneless, skinless, but to me, there's nothing like bone-in, skin-on. So what I'm doing, not touching the chicken, I'm spreading out the veg. I want the chicken to go on top. And if at the end of cooking, you wanted a little more color on the thighs, then you can just switch your oven to broiler and put it under the broiler for a few minutes. But these are very large thighs. This will serve easily 4 people. And you can see already how colorful this looks. Let me move this toward the center. 1 second. Okay, everything's spread out. So, like I said, my oven is at 400. In it goes, and I'm going to set it for 20 minutes because I'm going to need to turn it around at the halfway mark. So let me just wipe up my work area and give my hands a wash. We're going to put together this toasted garlic vinaigrette. And I wanted to show you what to look for when you're buying a head of garlic, right? Sounds very simple, but you know it's a good fresh head of garlic if the skin is very, very tight, the papery skin, and you can't remove it easily. There are no soft spots. It's nice and solid like this. And I'm going to show you how we easily open up this head of garlic. Instead of trying to, pry it apart, I stand the garlic on its side like this, and I put one hand over the other, and I lean like that, and here it comes. So you want to use your common sense. If a recipe is calling for a medium clove of garlic, this would be a medium clove, this would be a large clove. So just, use your common sense on that. Once again, if you're just joining me, make your life easier while you're cooking. No, 20 trips to the garbage can. I just line my bowl with a Publix bag or whatever grocery bag you have. And it makes it much, much easier. So we're going to do a very thin slice. This is really great knife skills practice, by the way. So we want to keep the cloves intact. So I don't want to smash it like I did for the chicken entree. So instead, I'm going to cut off each end like this. And then the peel will easily come off just like that, just by doing both. Now, since these are very large cloves, the recipe calls for 4 medium garlic cloves thinly sliced. So we're going to go with 3 of these. That should suffice. And remember, this is going to be part of the toasted garlic vinaigrette. Okay, so make sure all the papery skin is off. Does everybody love garlic out there? As much as I do? Yeah, that's good for 4. All right, so let's put this over here. So I'm going to show you how I do this. So I've got my claw. So I have my 4 fingers on the board and the thumb is behind the garlic. So you can either slice it lengthwise or crosswise like I'm going to do. It's just easier to do it that way. And my fingers are controlling the size of the slice, as you can see. And I can lay it flat now because it's easier to cut. Now, oftentimes in my classes, students will ask, well, what if I cut open the clove of garlic and it's green inside? It's not harmful to eat. I don't find really any difference. I mean, if it's really, really old and it's like sprouting a lot, then you could probably toss it. But if there's a little green in the center, you're okay. As you can see, I'm getting very close. Okay. So that's my garlic. So now I'm going to bring over, this is the closest thing we have to gas stoves in Florida. I'm in a condo in Palm Air. So this goes very, very quick, believe it or not. So I'm going to, I've got extra virgin, not me, the olive oil. Because that ship sailed many moons ago. So how do you know when your oil is hot enough? It will actually start to move around in the pan. It will smile at you. It will shimmer. And if you have any doubt, you could just take a piece of your ingredient and see if it sizzles. But it certainly does not take long when you're cooking with gas, that is for sure. So what I had in here is 1/3 cup of extra virgin olive oil. If you didn't have extra virgin, you could just use regular olive oil. That's what I indicate on your recipe. I just happen to have extra virgin. What makes it extra virgin? It's the first pressing of the olives. Now, garlic has a tendency to burn very quickly, so I want to make sure my flame is not too hot. So I'm dropping it down. Now I can go ahead. You can see it's sizzling. Oh, the smell. This is for my husband because he loves the garlic. So as you can see, I'm watching it very carefully. And oh my gosh, it smells so good. My mouth waters every time. We're almost there. I just want a little bit of golden color to it. Now, I don't want to add it to my blender container while it's burning hot, especially this is plastic. So I'm going to remove this to a bowl in a minute. Any questions so far?
Chef Alice, somebody just mentioned that most of their burners that they use are electric.
Yeah.
Burners, so that's same concept. I think the reason you're using that one is just because it's portable and.
Yeah, the only reason I'm using the gas is my stove is behind me and it would be really hard to get a view from the computer. That's the only reason.
Perfect.
I just have to be very careful. So I will tell you, in class, you know, I have a background in stand-up comedy from years ago. So we joked a lot in my cooking classes. And when people ask me, can you use the garlic that's in the jar? And I say, what is this garlic in the jar you speak of? Because no garlic in the jar.
See.
Do I hear someone say something?
That was just an accidental unmute. You're good, Chef Alice.
All right, we're just about there. I'm being ultra careful. This could go from 0 to 60 like that. So color always equals flavor. So giving this a little bit of toastiness is just the way to go. Let me flip these. All right, we are there. Nice and golden.
Alice, do you have any recommendations on like where you got your small stove, like where the best places to maybe get a gas burner like that?
Yeah, you could get the small stove from this website. I don't know if you've heard of it. Amazon?
It's a good one.
Yeah. But yeah, so here's the thing. Let me show you. I might as well give you a little primer on the stove, okay? So when I open it, as you can see, you have to purchase the butane fuel. So this is sold by the case. They come, I think, 6 or 12 in a case. And you just have to line it up with the notch and then press this down like that, and then you're good to go. It comes, I can't touch this now because it's too hot, but if you'd like later, I can show you how to assemble it, but it's pretty straightforward and it gives you very clear instructions. Remember, this is propane. This is a propane can of fuel. Fuel of canned propane is what you're using. Okay, so so I'm gonna park this in the freezer just for a minute. Let me put this away. We have 3 minutes before we turn the chicken around. Let me just give a wipe. Any questions while I'm wiping up? Can I give you some other suggestions for sheet pan dinners?
Absolutely. I don't see any questions here in the chat.
Okay. So with a sheet pan dinner, what's nice is it frees up your time to do your salad. You don't need to do a side veg. You don't need to do your starch. You can also use, if you are watching your diet and you don't want to have potatoes, you can use canned chickpeas. And the chickpeas roast beautifully. They get some color on them. They get a little crunch. You could use butternut squash. You could use sweet potato. You could use salmon, pork chops. I mean, it's endless. Any type of fish. You just have to remember your cooking time. And items that take a really long time to cook, like carrots, you may want to parboil ahead of time, you know, to buy yourself some time. All right, so I have minced chives. I've got roasted almonds. I'm going to flip my board. These are roasted salted almonds, which add incredible depth of flavor. So almonds are very popular in Spanish cooking. And I'm just going to do a rough chop. So when you rough chop, you're not looking for perfection, like when you're cutting julienne or you're dicing something. It's basically, look, just taking the knife. So they're discernible pieces of roasted salted almonds. So I use these nuts in pestos. Pestos are not just basil and pine nut. That's the traditional pesto, but there's so many options. I've done almonds and cilantro. I've done mint and roasted walnuts. Loads of options. So we're going to park this here. You notice everything is labeled. So before I begin class, every single thing is labeled. So I know where I'm prepping, where I'm serving, everything. All right, putting that there. Let me just rinse my board. Wipe. Okay, so now that's our timer. So let's see what's happening in the oven. Tongs are like the second pair of hands in your kitchen. I could not live without tongs. So I want you to see what's happening. So I'm just going to move my veg around. Can everybody see? We're getting some color on the thighs. And I'm just tossing this around. The onions are breaking down. Very, very, very nice. Put that back in. Okay, so now we can put together our vinaigrette, because remember our oil and garlic has cooled off sufficiently. So I'm using this NutriBullet. I'm very happy with it. I'm very picky about blenders. I bought a Ninja blender and it works great. It's a real workhorse, but when you go to pour something through the spout, if you're making like an emulsion, like a vinaigrette, or you're doing a blender hollandaise, it actually spits out everything. So had I known that going in, I would never have bought it. That wasn't mentioned in the many, many reviews, but that's what happened. All right, so I'm adding, everything goes in, the toasted garlic. Now, I've got my red wine vinegar, or you can use sherry vinegar. That's 2 tablespoons. We've got 2 teaspoons of honey. This is buckwheat honey. If you're wondering, why is that honey so dark? So you see, the name of the game is balance, right? It's sweet, it's tart, it's garlicky. These are all my little trebles. Make sure I didn't forget anything. Of course, we need salt and pepper. Oh yes, I forgot my shallot. Let me grab my shallot. 1 second. Okay, so shallots are fantastic. They're used in classic vinaigrettes, certainly in Southeast Asian cooking. And if you didn't have a shallot for this recipe, omit the shallot. Just don't substitute with onion. It's really not the same. Onion is a little too strong and will render the vinaigrette bitter. So because the blender is going to be doing most of the work, all I need to do is rough chop this. So rough chop, once again, just like the almonds, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to add this in here. About a half a teaspoon of salt. Vinaigrettes can take much more salt than you think they can. Everybody needs a pepper mill. That powdery stuff that they have in restaurants, it's just not the same. It's really not. Okay, let me make sure I got everything. My shallot, my honey, my vinegar, my olive oil. Perfect. Okay. So now, just put this on. It's going to be a little noisy. Okay. Let's give this a taste. Oh my God, I'm in heaven. It's so good. Although it's garlicky, it doesn't hit you over the head because the garlic is toasted. If this was raw garlic, that would be a different story. It would be much more pungent. But I think it's perfect. I think it needs just a tad more salt. I know you're thinking, haven't you put enough salt in everything already? No, it needs just a little more. And I think we should be good. So I want to show you the consistency that had the olive oil in it. I want to show you when you make a vinaigrette with any solid ingredients, look how beautiful that texture is. Not gorgeous? It almost looks like Dijon mustard, although this has no mustard in it. So the texture, of course, comes from the shallot and the toasted garlic, and it's just fantastic. It's so perfectly balanced. So we want to make sure that it's nice and chilled. Salads should be served on cold plates. I promise you, when you throw a dinner party or you have friends over for dinner and you pull those salad bowls that were sitting in the freezer and you put them on their placemat, they're going to say, oh, the plates are cold. It's very impressive. People always love cold food, cold plate. It's very, very simple. It keeps everything nice and cold. It keeps the lettuce nice and crisp. So now we're going to pull out the star of the show. How do you like them apples? Thank you.
Good, Chef Alice. One quick question while you're washing your hands.
Yep.
Somebody asked, can we substitute lemon juice or salt-free dash for all that sodium for health reasons?
Can you repeat? Can you substitute with what?
Substitute lemon juice or salt-free dash for all the sodium for health reasons.
Yes, you can. I know you're talking about the Mrs. Dash. I did a cooking demonstration at Chen Medical Center, and it had to be, completely salt-free, and they gave me Mrs. Dash to use. And I will say this, Mrs. Dash has a lot going on. So I would not go overboard with Mrs. Dash. Mrs. Dash has just loads of different, I don't know, what zests maybe, or different seasonings, but it's very, very busy. It's not my favorite seasoning, but in lieu of salt, if that works for you, certainly lemon. Everything always needs some kind of brightness, right? If you're tasting food and it's kind of flat, it doesn't always need extra salt. Sometimes it needs like a bit of lemon, a little bit of vinegar, something pickled, like pickled onion or whatever you want to use. But it has to be bright. It has to taste delicious. So we're using Granny Smith because I want a really nice tart apple. But if that's not the apples you have on hand, you can use really any kind of apple you like. You could also swap out with pear. But I will say this, that you don't want to slice the apple way ahead of time because, you know, apples oxidize very, very quickly. So you could either, if you wanted to do it ahead, you could hold it in acidulated water. That's just water that has a little bit of lemon juice added to it. But I say try to do the apples at the last minute. Now, I don't use an apple corer. I find them to be a pain in the neck to fish out the core. So what I do, I'll show you right now, I cut the apple in quarters, and then I just slice away the core using my paring knife. So, paring knife, small knife for a small job. So like I said, holding something round and hard so the knife doesn't slip away from me. I'll go right down the center, right down the center. And you also want to think about when you're cutting your salad ingredients, think about how are people going to eat this, right? If the pieces are too large, it's going to be too much. You have to think about that. Think about how nice it's going to look on the plate, etc. So now here's my core, and all I have to do is cut out the core just like this. You can either hold it like that. Let me show you. Or it's easier just to do it down like that, and the cores easily come out. Okay, let's get rid of this. So now it's just a matter of got my bowl for the apples already. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna slice it, these quarters. They look like little crescents, sort of. Just like that. You wanna make sure your knife is sharp. And I just want to tell you, if you have a knife set and it comes with the rod, that does not sharpen your knife. That hones your knife. It takes a sharp knife and brings it back to life, but it's not a knife sharpener. You want a knife sharpener that you can pull your knives through, either manual or electric. One side sharpens, one side hones. If you have a manual sharpener, it has two sides. You pull it through 7 or 8 times to sharpen, 7 or 8 times on the other side to hone it. Or you can send your knives out and get them professionally sharpened, like they do in restaurants. As you can see, very, very pretty. And this is getting, oh, left one out. This is getting blue cheese. Not everybody's a fan of blue cheese. You can use shaved Parmesan or Romano. You can use Gorgonzola, but blue cheese is a stronger cheese. We have just, so these are 2. This will easily serve 4 to 6 people. I like to serve a small salad, so people have room for the entree. Questions so far? Okay. We're going to check our chicken in a moment. So now, I'm going to get the blue cheese out of the fridge. Just stir this. So look at that beautiful consistency on the vinaigrette. So we've got our coarse chopped almonds. Nice big discernible pieces. The blue cheese. And we've got our chives that I already chopped. We just mix that. I'll garnish the top with a little more. So when I dress a salad, instead of dumping the vinaigrette right over the ingredients, I like to drizzle it around the sides and then bring everything in so I don't oversaturate one spot. So this is a plating spoon. If you ever go into a fancy restaurant and they have the sauce beautifully decorated, this is the utensil that does that. So I'll show you how we're doing that. So just around the edges. Okay. Now I bring everything in. And I always like to serve a little dressing on the side. I don't like to overdress salads. I don't like it to be too saturated. I would rather have people reach for more dressing than sit there with an overdressed, super soggy salad. We're just gonna look how pretty that looks with the chives. A little more. Can you see what's going on, Courtney?
Yes, everything looks good there.
Okay, so I'm going to okay. I think this is a really pretty dish. Does anyone know what this is called? Can anyone guess? No? This
I
is
don't
called
see any pictures in the chat.
this is a cazuela. So these dishes, they can go in the oven. If you go to a tapas restaurant, this will often be served for your tapas, your shrimp, whatever you're getting. So this is going to go right inside. Look at the almonds. And you can top it with more cheese. But this is so delicious. There's so many salads you can make that don't include lettuce and tomato. Remember the salad that I made a couple of months ago? The celery, date, and walnut salad. Hit it with a little more chives on top. Chive. And there you have it. Spanish apple, almond, and blue cheese salad. Okay, so now, let me wipe up here. One second, everybody. So, is there any holiday tradition that you do every year? Does anyone do the Italian feast with the seafood? Anyone?
Yeah, please respond in the chat if you do.
Wow, wow, wow. Look at this. So I do want to show everyone, how do you know when your chicken thighs are done? So there are two different ways. So I want to show you. I'm going to take one out here. Okay, so what we have here, our skin is already crisped, which is why I put this on top of the vegetable mixture, the potatoes, the green beans, the peppers, the red onion, so it has time to crisp up. But how do you know it's done inside? Well, first of all, the proper internal temperature for chicken is 165 degrees. There's always carryover cooking time, so when I take it out of the oven, the temperature might rise about 5 degrees, but the other way of knowing whether it's done is if you prick the chicken, if the juices run clear yellow, you know it's done. If there's any pink, it is not done yet. That's one way. The other way is you have an instant read thermometer. You can buy these anywhere. They cost maybe $5 or $6. You insert it anywhere there's no bone. That's very, very important, because if this touches the bone, it's going to give me a false reading. It's going to temp too high, and I might think the chicken is done when indeed it's not done yet. So I want to just go right into the flesh, away from the bone, and I hold it there for about 15 seconds. and I'm like maybe 5 degrees off. So it needs just a few more minutes in the oven. Whoops. But the potatoes are beautifully golden. The red onion, I don't want to burn my board, but as you can see, everything is cooked. The beans are tender. The potatoes, as you can see, completely tender. And the prize, all that delicious garlic, is completely meltingly tender and golden. So this is so fantastic. I set aside some of the marinade. So if anyone wants to drizzle any over their serving, they can do so. So just a few more minutes because we're just about up to temp. If you're wondering how am I holding this, I'm wearing an UGG glove. They work, they work, they work. Okay, I'll show you how I plate this. Okay, any questions so far?
I don't see any right now.
Okay. All right, so I think what I'll do before we go ahead and plate the finished dish, I wanted to show you the two different types of knife chops. Certainly, if anyone's watching right now, feel free to grab your cutting board and your chef knife. Always make sure that it's anchored with either a little rubber mat, a wet towel, a paper towel that's damp. So this, look, stays put and it's not sliding all over the place, okay? So let's do one. We're gonna do the tap chop. The tap chop, here, let's do some of the thyme and some garlic. You see how easy to get the peel off the garlic? The tap chop is when you're not looking to be really precise. You just want to chop to get the job done. So watch. I have control. I keep my hand over the middle of the blade. And with an up and down motion, just like this, the job gets done. And every once in a while, I want to scrape off my knife. And then you just chop to your heart's content. Let's say I wanted to make a tzatziki sauce or a garlicky sauce where I'm using raw garlic, but I don't want big pieces of raw garlic. I can turn my minced garlic into a garlic paste simply by using salt as an abrasive. I sprinkle it right over my pile of garlic. And then with the 5-degree edge on the chef knife, watch how I turn this into a paste. Just like that, a scraping motion. Now, I have my garlic paste. Okay? So that was the tap chop, how to make garlic paste. And if you want to learn how to rock and chop, you're basically going to hold your knife. You go down and back, down and back, down and back, down and back. I'll take a piece of the apple. Just like this. Nice little matchsticks of apples. So this takes practice. Just like anything, practice makes perfect. Nobody becomes an expert out of the gate, right? You have to practice. All right, so now I do believe we should be completely up to temp. I just want to plate this for everybody. And I have a very similar style platter because as you can see, this matches the Consuela beautifully. So So what I'm gonna do, let me take this off. We're going to pile the vegetables just to make it easier to serve. They get piled on one side of the platter. You get the idea. Whoops. Like this. It's just easier to serve. The skin is nice and crispy. It's like I don't want to disturb the skin. I realize the skin of the chicken is not really good for you. That I know. But if you don't eat this kind of chicken that often, just treat yourself. Even though the thigh has more fat than the breast, as far as flavor is concerned, you cannot beat it flavor-wise. So what we're going to do, remember we had those reserved sprigs. So I'm just going to lay the sprigs over. You could do it anyway. And I think I'm going to dust this with just a little bit of my pimentone. Like that. Give a little bit of color. And that is the dish. So what an incredible meal. Not much more than an hour, and so much could be done ahead of time. Your vinaigrette could be done ahead of time. Your marinade base for the chicken can be done ahead of time. You can prep your veg also ahead of time. And you have a beautiful dinner, great flavor profile. I can smell the fennel and the citrus and those flavors of Spain that I love so much. So there you have it, Spanish apple salad with blue cheese and almonds, and your sheet pan dinner that's got loads of veg and chicken thighs.